It's a job that if you look at and say, you know what, my job is to act in the best interest of the association. But what I really want to do is increase the value of my association. If I believed it was worth $100,000, I wanted to be worth $110,000. I wanted to be worth more than a community association across the street or down the street or a mile away. And if that board goes in there and say, this is our job, then it's easier to make decisions, and the likelihood of not making a decision or turning your head or putting your head in the sand or kicking the can down the road is avoided all the way.
HOA Insights is brought to you by 5 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, Kevin Davis Insurance Services, and the Inspectors of Election. You'll find links to their website and social media in the show notes.
Hi, I'm Kevin Davis of Kevin Davis Insurance Services.
And I'm Sherry Branson of Kevin Davis Insurance Services. And this is HOA Insights, where we promote common sense
for common area. And welcome, everybody, to episode number 153, where we're talking to, right now, Sherry Branson, my co-host, for how many webinars we've been doing over the past how many years?
Kevin, we have dozens. We definitely have dozens of webinars. We have a whole library going back about 14 years. So we've done webinars about every topic imaginable related to community associations, claims, risk management, the policy, the D&O policy, really just everything under the sun, cyber. So it's fun to do a podcast for a change, Kevin. We haven't done one in a while.
I've been trying to get you to go to one of these things for a while, and I'm glad I talked you into it. And guess what? We're going to do another one next month also. We're going to do back-to-back ones.
Great. Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
But this one, we're going to talk about something really special that's really going to impact the podcast listeners. And that is how no decision is a decision.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't realize that, Kevin.
And so what we're going to do, go into how much it costs, what's it about, and why, and what stops them from making a decision. As always, if you missed any prior episodes, you can find them at www.hoainsights.org on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And those of you watching on YouTube can see we have a special HOA Insight mug here.
I love it, Kevin. That's a great mug.
Yes. Got it from our merch store.
They can get them in the merch store? Is that where they can get them?
Yes. And you got to get one because you're going to be one of my regular people. You and I are going to be talking a lot on these podcasts over the next couple of years. So you got to get one. And there's other free stuff in there. You have like Zoom backgrounds, but go there and you'll find really some great things in there. And we also love hearing from you. If you have a topic you'd like for us to address, you can reach us through our website or on the show notes. But today, the program is about leadership under pressure. What happens when issues sit unresolved, and how boards can approach difficult decisions more confidently.
Great topic, Kevin. Great topic. And, you've been working in the community association industry for decades, so you have lots of experience. What do you think is the number one reason why board members are indecisive, why they don't make decisions?
You know what? To me, there's several reasons why. But fear is the number one reason why they don't make decisions. They're afraid because they make a decision, and if they're wrong, guess what's going to happen? They're not liked anymore. And being liked is a really very, very important item if you're in the community association board of directors. And that's the problem. When we talk about indecisions, board members of community association understand one thing, that it is your job to make decisions. It is your job to run the association, to manage the association, to make sure that the people who are living there is just feeling a little bit better about the association than the association next door. That's all you want to do. There's a lot of community associations out there. And the bottom line is that, we want to make sure that our association is well respected, that's doing its job, that's managing as best of its abilities.
Absolutely. And it's a fine line, Kevin, where they, of course, the board members want the best for their association, and so do the homeowners. They want it to look nice. They want the landscaping to look great and things to be maintained as they should be, but that does cost money. So, sometimes, the association, the board members might, if a poor decision is made or a delayed decision, those two things can happen, and board members are nervous about making any decision, basically.
You just hit the nail on the head. We talked about decisions about money. That's probably the number one area when we talk about indecision. Indecision happens when it's about special assessments, increasing assessments, have to build build a fence or fix a fence or any kind of repairs. Whenever that has to be done, the first thing the board does is make no decision.
Unfortunately. And, Kevin, from a fiduciary, from a money standpoint, if the board member fails to act, does that carry the same weight as if they made a bad decision or a poor decision or improper decision? Are they the same?
You know what? It's a good question because when we talk about boards has a fiduciary responsibility, that means they have a job to act in the best interest of the association without conflict of interest. So now, if you're talking about boards who fail to make a decision, that means they're not acting in the best interest of the association. That's the bottom line of we know every association or every of these meetings we talk about breach of fiduciary duty. The number one claim that we see in D&O for community associations is the board breached their fiduciary duty, which means a board failed to act in the best interest of the association. So when you're talking about it's my turn, I'm the board president. And my number one job is to look and see. I have a reserve study, and the reserve study tells me that I have to increase the assessments, 10, 15% more so that I can comply with my reserve study. Now, if I choose not to do it, if I say, you know what, I'm not going to do it because if I do that, unit owners will be mad at me. Okay. And they don't like my decision. Therefore, I'm going to not make a decision or just ignore it for now. I'm only going to be on this board for another 12 months. The new board, it's going to be their problems. Now, guess what happens when that new board gets in and they find out that I, who was on the board for the past 10 years, failed to make that one decision.
Right, which could be a huge decision. The garage might be deteriorating, or the foundation, or the roof. I mean, these are major decisions that cost a lot of money, but also can basically snowball and get worse as time goes on. Could somebody be sued? They could be sued for this, right, Kevin? If the new board comes in and says, wait a minute, you guys were supposed to fix that roof or fix that foundation, and now it's going to cost double the amount to fix it than it would have cost 5 years ago.
And that's the whole point. That's, again, we talk about indecision. You see, I would rather to get the research done and say, listen, the decision is to have a special assessment of $50,000. Okay. That way we honored our fiduciary responsibility. Now, we know the people are not going to like us. They may vote us out. They may say, guess what? We don't like the job you've done.
Realistically, that could happen.
And it has. And it happens more often than not because, again, if I'm the board president and I look at my reserve study says my roofs are going to need to be replaced in the next 5 years. We're going to need X number of dollars to do it. I have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that I honor it. Because if I don't, what's going to happen to me? Now, all of a sudden, I refuse to. You have a new board of directors involved. And guess what that new board is going to want to do? And that's hold me responsible for a decision I didn't make 3 or 4 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so it's really just makes the situation basically worse. And, Kevin, with this, we were just talking about like deferred maintenance because it could be expensive. It could be a large special assessment, that kind of a thing. How often do you think deferred maintenance starts as a financial decision and ends up as a legal or insurance problem?
Well, you know what? I would say deferred maintenance start off as a observation problem first. Okay. Meaning that I'm walking through the association and I start noticing things that the association is not being taken care of. Okay. Once I notice that and I'm a board member and I ignore it, it's a decision I've made. I made a conscious decision to ignore, certain things in there. I start noticing that there's the balcony railings are not as tight as they should be. Okay. First thing you notice, that the balcony railings are not as tight. Another thing you notice is there's plaster falling off into my garage. Okay. Or cracks appearing, But again, as a board member, I have a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of the association. But I walk around with blinders in my association because I see maintenance issues that I am ignoring. Now, the bigger problem with that is that if I have a maintenance contract or maintenance agreement, or I have a maintenance manual, again, and I choose not to follow the manual. So now the manual tells me that once a year, these are the 4 or 5 things I need to do. If I not only see them, but I ignore them, Again, am I acting in the best interest of the association?
Yeah, you're not. If you're avoiding it or delaying it or kicking the can down the road. And, if they delay raising these assessments to avoid the backlash, that we just talked about, what risks are they building, Kevin? What's building up from there?
This is where it really gets tough for board members because again, I know as a board member that there's deferred maintenance issues. Like I just said, there's railings, okay? And we just see certain things. We see the cracks. But then we ignore it. What we end up doing is defending our position. So in other words, if the unit owner, you're a unit owner, and you see if some of these things hasn't been done, guess what happens? Now all of a sudden you come to me as the president of the association and say, wait a minute, I see, look, I was holding on the railing. Well, guess what? I think you're overreacting. That railing's been there for 20 years. Nobody ever fell. Nobody ever hurt themselves. So why don't you? So we become defensive. And when the board becomes defensive, then all of a sudden it creates a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We can't address things if all of a sudden I disagree with what you're doing because again, I've walked around and I see we have a manual. We have a maintenance manual that says that we have to do these things. But because if I do them, I know it's going to cost money, and if it costs money, the association's not going to like me. If they don't like me, they may throw me out, or they may hassle me at the pool.
A lot of stress.
Yeah, a lot of stress. And the easiest thing to do, again, is to do what? Make no decision.
Right. It's the easy way out. It's basically the easy way out, Kevin. Mm-hmm. And, something I've seen before is inconsistent enforcement. So how does that increase the likelihood of discrimination or harassment claims?
This is an interesting one because when we talk about something like inconsistent, again, indecisions is bad, but then inconsistent decisions is just as bad as no decisions. In fact, it probably is a no decision if you think about it. In other words, an inconsistent decision is for me. Okay, all of a sudden, Sherry, you are the person everybody loves in the association. Everybody gets along with you. You're a great person, and you do the best job you can do. You rarely get into any complaints or anything like that. So all of a sudden, I realize that you're parking your car in visitors parking. Okay, fine, there's not a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? Now all of a sudden, the guy who I don't like, who's on the other side of the association, right? He parks his car in visitors parking, and I don't like him at all. I'm waiting for him to put that car in there. So guess what? My decision now is to say, guess what? You're in violation. You've been in visitors parking for the past 48 hours, and therefore I'm going to fine, I'm going to notify you, I'm going to penalize you. Now, I haven't touched you at all because, you're my co-host. We like each other. We get along well. You come in, you pet my dog, you take good care of me. So that, again, that is a no decision. So I passed on you. So inconsistent, be inconsistent is another way of saying no decision. I allowed you to get away with parking in the visitors parking. Mike, who lives in, unit number X, I don't like him. So as soon as he parked, 48 hours, he has a violation letter. He can't park more than 48 hours. So now it's been 49, 50 hours he's been there. He's in violation. He gets that violation letter. And now I'm going to really nail it to him because here's a guy I don't like. That's what happens when we have these inconsistent. Inconsistent is the same as treating some people with the no decision part. That no decision is really, really important because, again, we're mistreating people. And you mentioned the word like discrimination or bullying and harassment. Those are three things that we see more and more in community associations. Okay? Because what happens is that as board members, if we're indecisive, the reason why we're indecisive is because if you're indecisive, we believe that you don't want to act in your responsibility as a board member. Don't forget, as a board member, you are you're in a business. Okay? You have to make decisions. You're in the business. If you have 10 units, and each unit is worth 100,000, guess what? You have a $10 million corporation. Okay. So you got to treat it like it's a corporation. You can't walk in there and go, you know what? I'm going to treat the people who I like differently than people who I don't like.
Right. Favoritism, that kind of a thing. And treat it like just like a fun kind of hobby. It really is a job.
It's a job that if you look at and say, you know what, my job is to act in the best interest of the association. But what I really want to do is increase the value of my association. If I believed it was worth $100,000, I want it to be worth $110,000. I want it to be worth more than a community association across the street or down the street or a mile away. And if that board goes in there and say, this is our job, then it's easier to make decisions, and the likelihood of not making a decision or turning your head or putting your head in the sand or kicking the can down the road is avoided all the way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think if, people are homeowners understand, I mean, they're not going to be happy. I'm not saying they're not going to be happy and they're not going to complain. But if you explain clearly to them why the assessment has to happen or why the fees have to go up, the monthly fees, that kind of a thing. If it's clearly explained to them in with documentation and stuff like that, I think that's much better than avoiding it altogether or just, delaying it, basically delaying it.
And that's what it all boils down to. So I guess what? That's a perfect time to take our break. And then we'll come back and give some more, let's give some more answers. Let's give some more advice to people out there who really are afraid of making some decisions. So let's take a quick break and we'll come back and finish our conversation with Sherry.
Is your HOA or condo self-managed and you don't want to work as hard volunteering? Are you full managed and looking to save money? Or are you looking to split the accounting from a manager's role for better service? Let Community Financials handle the monthly accounting for you. We collect dues, pay bills, produce financial reports, include portals, and help with other support services, all while providing awesome service. We love the opportunity to help you make your community accounting stress-free with our industry-leading systems and expert team. Visit our website, communityfinancials.com, to learn more.
And we're back. So we know that indecision creates a problem for the association because when you make no decision, it is a decision. So we start from there. And we talk about the three areas we really talked about in terms of where no decisions are made. It is number one, when it comes to money. When it comes to money, we recognize that the best course of action is to do nothing at all. The second area was maintenance. We see things that need to be done. We have the railings out there, that we see that they're a bit looser than it should be, and we ignore it because it's still there. It hasn't fallen completely off. Nobody's gotten hurt yet, And the third one is inconsistent rule enforcement. Those are the three areas when we talk about indecision. Those are three areas that really, really, truly impact community associations more so than any other area facing indecisions. Now, let's talk about what happens though when when there's no decision in those three areas. Well, we're saying right now, you as a person who lives in that community association, you're not happy.
Yeah, I feel that repairs aren't being made, that kind of a thing. Let's say I see, problems with the foundation or balconies or something like that. And I just say, wait a minute, why isn't this stuff being fixed? Because people do notice. People notice. And they know, and if an inspection was done, a structural inspection of the building, and it's showing, that's public information shared with homeowners, and they know, that repairs do need to be made, and it's not being done. Well, that could be a problem.
Yeah, and that's the key thing we're talking about because we all know it's a problem. We all know that railing is loose. We all know that the roof should be repaired. And what happens is we say we'll wait till the next board comes in, or we don't believe it's our responsibility, or we just put our head in the sand. We're looking down the road and we're seeing a potential lawsuit against us for breach of fiduciary duty. It's been 40 years I've been selling insurance, D&O insurance for board members. The number one area that we see when there's a claim against a board members is the board breached their fiduciary duty. And when you breach your fiduciary duty, it's going to be, basically like I said, it's financial, enforcement, or maintenance. Those are the three areas that constantly get done. So when we talk about things to help you do a better job, and you mentioned the one right off the bat was communication. Okay. Communication is so important because you're giving news that people don't want to hear.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's not good news. Yeah.
Normally it's not good news, and normally it starts with not good news if I want more money, if I'm limiting you from doing certain things in the common area. If you can't park where you want to park, you can't go swimming whenever you want to go swimming, certain things you can't do. I'm telling you can't do it. You don't like that. So the easiest thing for us to do is to ignore those things. And same thing with maintenance. We want to ignore those three things because I want freedom to walk through my community association as the president, and people walk up to me and say, "Great job, because you kept the assessments low. Great job, you kept the assessments low. Wonderful job, Kev, you kept those assessments low." That's what I want to hear over and over again. But what happens is that we know the insurance rates are going up. Okay, we know maintenance rates are going up. We know to get a new roof, hire a contractor, get the equipment, costs more than it costs any time in the past. So if you communicate right off the bat and say, guess what? Our assessments will go up higher. We may need a special assessment to make some of the repairs that we have. It's going to cost money. But our goal is to do one simple thing: decrease the value of our unit over time.
And Kevin, in your 40 years in the industry, when you think about the most serious claims that you've seen, you talked about breach of fiduciary duty being the number one claim that you've seen. How often with your recollection, do they start with a delay rather than a reckless decision?
When you talk about a reckless decision, we can't determine what a reckless decision is. In other words, a decision is no decision is a reckless. No decision couldn't be a reckless decision. In other words, the board of directors has a job to make a decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that decision is well thought out. Okay. But to you, it could be reckless. In other words, a reckless decision can say, guess what? We need to increase the assessments more than it's allowed by law. Okay. Or we need to have a special assessment to repair the roofs. That special assessment may be for you reckless. You can say, you who live in unit number 52, say, guess what? This is a reckless decision on your part. There's no way in the world that roof should cost that much money. I believe that you're getting kickbacks. I believe you're having special treatment done, and that's the reason why it is a problem. So would you just open up another can of worms there, Sherry, in the sense that as board members, you have a job to do. And again, if you act in the best interest association, you don't care if somebody in unit number 32 says, guess what? I believe your decisions are reckless. Because guess what?
Right.
I did the best job I can do. Again, number one, we communicated. That's really very, very important. The second one is get outside advice. Get advice.
Absolutely. Professional advice.
Yeah. Getting a reserve study done. Don't go up on a roof and figure out that, guess what? This roof should last for another 5 to 10 years. Get a reserve study.
If you're not a roof expert, don't try to do it yourself. Don't try to do it, say, oh, I can figure all this out. No, hire the professionals, the reserve specialists,
All the professionals out there that specialize in community associations. Bankers. There are bankers out there that teaches you what to do with your reserve account to make sure that you don't end up putting it in a bank where it can lose because you put it in the wrong bank. Get experts. I'm glad you talked about that recklessness, because when somebody says, when you said that was a reckless decision, I want to say, guess what? It was a decision based on the information that I have. And my information I have is from experts in the industry. I got experts from the industry. Guess what you can do? You as a person who lives in a unit who's upset with me because I increased the assessments now more than allowable by law, or I want a special assessment that you feel is reckless, then guess what happens now? I'm feeling vindicated because I'm being sued now, okay, because of my, quote, reckless decision. But the bottom line is that I've done my job. I communicated to you. I've used experts. And here's the final thing I love to do. I give a piece of advice to is kindness. Okay. If you act in a kind way, people will be more responsive to you.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it's a challenging job being a board member, and I know some people want to be popular and want to be well liked by everybody in the community. But I think if the news is presented in such a way where it's not, antagonistic or not, not hostile, just like in the right manner and the right tone, I think it can be, you know what I mean? It's still going to be difficult, but I think people will understand more. They'll definitely understand more.
And we're living in a world, too, that right now that we are heightened right now. We all feel uncomfortable. We all feel like, we're being...
Stress, a lot of stress.
Exactly. A lot of stress. I always said like a low-level depression going on because, these are challenging times we're all living in. So if all of a sudden I'm saying, guess what? We need a special assessment to repair the roofs or repair some of the common area, and you are saying, wait a minute, I believe it's reckless. I think it's a reckless decision on your part. Now, I have two choices. I can say, who are you to tell me it's reckless or not? Or I can go, guess what? Lower my voice. Guess what? I'm sorry you feel that way, Sherry. I've done my research. I have professionals out there who told me that this is our best course of action. Sorry you feel that way. Now, all of a sudden, I can't control how you feel. You can still believe
Right.
it's a reckless decision on your part, but I maintain some control on my part. I'm treating you kindly.
Rather than arguing, you're just saying, I'm going by what the professionals are telling me is the best way to go, the best route, and to keep the value of your property. Maybe, to talk to them about the fact that you want to preserve the value of their property and the whole association as a whole.
That's it. So that's what we're doing there. So we're talking about answers, and guess what? We're coming to our time now, and I think that's some of the key things we need to talk about. In terms of answers, breach of fiduciary duty is the number one claim that we see as insurance professionals. And breach of fiduciary duty is you did not act in the best interest of the association. And we don't act in the best interest of associations usually because you're afraid of the financial part of it. You don't want to ask people for how much money it costs, or you don't want to be upfront on the financial side. You don't want to enforce the documents correctly. So you don't enforce them. Guess what happens? You have things like discrimination and bullying and harassment. And the third one is maintenance. If you don't maintain the building, guess what happens to the value of my unit? In my $250,000 community association unit I live in is now worth only $200,000. So guess what you've just done? You breached your fiduciary duty because I've lost $25,000 on my unit.
Right. Yeah. People, if they think of the big picture as a homeowner, they'll realize, oh, this makes sense because they're trying to help me keep the value of my property and everybody's property. They're doing the best they can as board members. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so the answers are, like we said, communication. Got to communicate. Communicate in a kind way. That's it. Communicate in a kind way. That way you lower the temperature, you make people feel that they matter, that they're important, and what their issues are important to you. If you do that, it happens to be able to talk to somebody who says, guess what? You just made a reckless decision. Just by saying reckless, it brings up the height.
Get defensive. People get defensive.
Yes,
Yeah.
they get defensive.
Like you're accusing somebody of doing something. Yeah.
And as a board member, what we don't want to do is get into a fight or get into a battle. What we want to do is lower the temperature, look at the person and say, I'm sorry you feel that way. But guess what I've done? I have experts, professional experts that guided me in terms of what we need for the next 5 to 10 years.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to do it. The perfect way to do it. Just explain it in a very calm, low-key way and not try to, bring the temperature up, kind of bringing the temperature down.
Yes. So guess what? I think this is good. I think that's a good ending. I think that I think we did good on that. Anything you want to add to what I just said? What do you think?
I think it's a great topic, Kevin, and I think a lot of board members will get a lot out of this and realize that if they just don't try to look at it so much as a popularity contest, and treat it like a business, I think that's the key. I think that's really the key. And to be, like you said, kind about it and just present it in such a way that they're working in the best interests of the homeowners and of the association. And I think everybody would, as a homeowner myself, you would understand. You know what I mean? It's not to hurt somebody. It's not just for the heck of it, to raise the condo fees or the HOA fees. It's to help them, basically to help them out.
You nailed it. So listen, join us again next week for another HOA Insight where we promote common sense for common areas. And Sherry, we'll see you again in a few more weeks, but we'll see you definitely for our webinar. So look forward to it. Look forward to everybody. Thanks a lot and take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Take care, everybody. See you soon.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing you can do is engage in the conversation. Leave a question in the comments section on our YouTube video. You can also email your questions or voice memos to podcast@hoainsights.org or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.